East African Institute of Learning, and at least today we are going to break the continuity code, the New Testament. Remember, we have two testaments. We have the Old Testament and the New Testament. Mu Luganda we have endagaano enkadde n'endagaano empya. A testament, in the First Testament, that is the Old Testament, there were 5 books. It talks about the beginning of the universe and what happened during the creation, and when God created everything, the earth was empty and had to fill the earth. So the Old Testament, it is a container containing all the original, all the message that happened before Christ. So even the prophecies about the Christ, the coming Messiah, and they were in the Old Testament. So this time around, for us, we are going to specifically look at the New Testament. So the New Testament is looking at the life after the coming of Christ. So when Jesus came, the New Testament was made. So for it is talking about the new, as the word new, empia, we had the old enkade, now we have a new. For us, we're going to put our emphasis on the New Testament. So in this course unit, we shall look at a number of things. Ways of worship. How did these people worship God? Right together. How did the Gentiles, the Jews, embrace the coming of the Messiah? We shall look at the canonicity, transformation, the formation of the New Testament, the 27 books of the New Testament, driving them from the 60s, the Old Testament. Now we are shifting into the New Testament. Which criteria, which procedures, what things, what factors did they consider when they are taking a certain book? What factor did they consider when they are leaving a certain book? What was their area of interest? So this course unit is going to help us to understand, as students of CRE, as students of RE, as students of religious education, Christianity, it is going to help us to understand what was really behind the formation of the New Testament. Still, it is going to help us to understand what was that gospel before. How was the gospel spread before the writing of the gospel, before these Bibles you move with, the New Testament, we call them the Good News Bibles that we move with. How was the gospel preached? That's what we call the oral method of preaching. So how was the gospel spread in the past, before the gospel being written? How was it spread? So the New Testament is going to help us to acknowledge, to understand what was really behind and how was the gospel spread. Because by that time, we didn't have written gospels. We didn't have writing materials. We didn't have specific language. We didn't have people with clear evidence that can really convince people that really what was being said happened. But time came and things were discovered. So we shall understand that. On our screen there, we are seeing the word, a statement before the gospel there was a gospel. Oral method, that is the kerygma, centering about the birth, suffering, the ministry, the death, and the resurrection of Jesus. So, the New Testament is going to help us to understand all the questions that we have. Did Jesus really exist? If we existed, what did he go through? If we went through all that, what was the result of his experience? We shall look at the people you normally hear, the apostles, the followers. Who were the apostles? What role did they play? How did the persecution influence their lives? We shall look at letters. Look at Paul's letters to the Corinthians, Paul's letters to the Galatians, James's letter. All these are the apostles. How did Paul, who was Saul, a persecutor of the church, turn to become an apostle? So this continuity of New Testament is going to help us to understand all those questions that we've been asking ourselves. So as a student of CRE or religious education, you have to be knowing both testaments, the New and the Old Testament. Because it is these testaments that will help us to understand what we are really reading. Because some people read the Bible, but they don't know where it originated from. They don't know even the meaning of the word Bible. Someone reads the Quran, he doesn't know where the Quran originated from. But when you go into details, you understand where the book that you are reading came from. Why is it called a religion? Why is it called Christianity? We got a religion called Christianity after the coming of Christ, because it is Christ that people united. So from Christianity, from Christ, they got a religion called Christianity. All people that were ready to follow him, they became Christians. They united with him. So all this information is being stored in the New Testament. Then the Old Testament doesn't talk about him, but it just prophesies about the future Messiah. So this book is going to help us, the continuity of New Testament is going to help us to understand all those questions that have been bouncing in our heads. Where does Christianity come from? You can be a Christian when you don't know where Christianity came from. Christianity existed after the coming of Christ, because he is the one that initiated what we call Christianity. People who united with him. Look at the people that were fishermen. They left their occupation. They had to come and join him. They had to come and join him, and they ended up serving him. They ended up moving with him. Look at the Philip. Look at the James. Look at Judas. Look at Peter. All these people had their work. But with Christ, they united. And now when Jesus died, he ascended to heaven and left all the responsibilities under the control of his disciples, who later on started to spread the gospel to distant areas. So, this continuity is going to help us Christians to understand the study of the gospel period. Before the gospel, there was a gospel. The pre-gospel period refers to the period where believers that existed before the gospel were put into writing. Pre-gospel period refers to the period of believers that existed before the gospel being written. Before the gospel was written on paper, before the gospel was written in the Bibles that you move with, that period was called pre-gospel. Why the word pre means before. So the gospel, before being written, there was a way it was preached. And that was what we call the oral methodology of preaching, or the oral method of preaching. That is the door-to-door, mouth. You come, someone knocks your door, they talk to you, mouth to mouth. That is door-to-door. Someone, you speak, you use your tongue, use your mouth to preach. So these are the ways the gospel was preached to the people before it was written. So that is enough to make us understand why are we going to look at this continuity. When we come back, we are going now to start what we call the early church apostolic activities. That is going to help us understand how did these people worship their God. I beg to submit from here. Have a good day.